and welcome to Seasons of Justice from the West Midlands Racial Justice Initiative. I'm Kevin Thompson, and our work at WMRJI is about dismantling systemic racism inside the Church of England and insisting that anti-racism is not a statement, it's a structural change people can actually experience. Now, this is a special edition podcast in time for Windrush Day, which is on the 22nd of June. Today, we're asking what the Windrush scandal teaches us about institutions, about who gets believed, who gets ignored, how process becomes punishment, and what accountability looks like when it has teeth. We're also going to connect this to the Church's own path from lament to action, participation, education, training, mentoring, young people, and structures and governance. But before we dive into today's podcast, let me introduce our guest. Bishop Desmond Jaddoo is MBE, is chair of the Windrush National Organisation and a respected national campaigner for equality, social justice, and the rights of the Windrush generation. Since 2020, he has been a prominent advocate for Windrush reform, redress, and community engagement, working closely with government departments, advisory groups, and Windrush organisations to improve outcomes for those affected by the Windrush scandal. He played a direct role in matters referenced within the Wendy Williams Windrush Lessons Learned Review, including involvement in case study number 1, and has actively participated in ministerial roundtables, engagement meetings, consultations on the Windrush compensation scheme, justice review discussions, and wider stakeholder committees connected to Windrush reform and reconciliation. During his chairmanship of the Windrush National Organisation, the organisation has hosted 4 international Windrush conferences, with the 5th scheduled to take place this year, alongside organising 4 national Windrush vigils in Windrush Square, bringing together community leaders, parliamentarians, faith representatives, and those directly impacted by the Windrush scandal. Alongside his public and community leadership, Bishop Dr. Jaddoo serves as presiding bishop of the Village Fellowship and the Apostolic Pastoral Congress, Bishop of the City of Birmingham, and Vice Chancellor of the Holy Apostolic Order of St. Hadrian of Canterbury. His contribution across faith leadership, civic engagement, and advocacy for the Windrush generation was recognised through the award of an MBE for services to the Windrush generation. Bishop Jaddoo, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. That's quite a story you've read there.
You're welcome, Bishop. Just first point, in one Windrush National Organisation meeting, people asked for hard evidence, as in how many people were actually helped through outreach, including the Windrush Ambassador Scheme. Now, the Home Office response talks about 40 community leaders and an estimated reach of over 1.6 million. And for West Midlands Racial Justice Initiative, participation is not just being consulted, it's who holds influence, who's trusted, and who shapes decisions. So I wanted to ask, from your perspective, what does real community participation look like in Windrush repair? And what are the signs that outreach is building trust rather than just generating numbers?
Well, all I can really talk about, Kevin, is what I have done and Windrush National Organisation and our ethos and values. Mm-hmm. And we advocate for better outcomes. And the importance of that is, it's not just telling people about it, it's actually assisting them as well. Now, the first thing is we have to get narratives correct. What is Windrush? This morning, ironically, I had a lady call me from Sheffield, and she said, I want to find out about Windrush and I said, what losses have you suffered? And she said, well, it's not about losses, it's the way in which we were treated. Mm-hmm. Now, Windrush is not there for that. Windrush is there. It's a status scheme, meaning people who have been unable to regularize their normal status in the UK, particularly since 2010, when the hostile environment erupted And people ask, for example, now to get benefits, sometimes you've got to show a passport or demonstrate your lawful status to be in the UK to go to a doctor's surgery.
Yes.
Open a bank account. Banks are staunch about getting passports these days, And many years ago, people thought a passport is to travel, which they're right. That's what it's there for. But unfortunately, having a passport now is king because it demonstrates your lawful status to be in the UK. And one of the things is with that, some organizations, employers, government institutions, they misapplied that. But issue is, Windrush is about helping people to get their status, to ensure they get their status. The political and the history behind all of this, let's deal with the here and now. The here and now is to get them their lawful status. Then should they have suffered losses, then they apply for compensation and they should receive compensation. A very good example of this, we have a man born after 1983. His brother and sisters had a British passport. He did not. Now, this is going to explain to your viewers and listeners exactly what real outcomes are. He came to me. He said, I cannot get a British passport issued to me because passport office said I'm not British. Right. Because my mum did not neutralize. Now, that's not a pun. That's what he said. I said, you mean naturalize? He said, oh, is that what it is? The point is, he did not see the relevancy of that in his life. His mum came from Jamaica. What transpired was that his mother did not naturalize. She saw no need for it. She's a pensioner. As far as she's concerned, she's got no issue. She'd never traveled back to Jamaica since arriving here. However, because she didn't naturalize, her son being born after 1983 takes his mother's nationality, allegedly. And in this case, she's still Jamaican. Yes. So what we had to do, this man was started suffering from depression. What we did was we naturalized his mum. He then got an embossed letter to say he's British. He's now got his British passport. Mum's been compensated because obviously of the shame she felt, that she felt as though she was holding her son back. And he got compensation because he ended up suffering from depression, being on antidepressants, being off work sick. Case is resolved. That's what we call a true outcome, meaning, number one, we engaged. He came to us through our outreach services. We listened to what he had to say. We then applied the formula that we have. He got his passport. His mum got a passport as well, by the way. And both of them were compensated. And now they're getting on with their lives. Now, in terms of engagement, you can't just tell someone about this without having the mechanisms to deal with it. They have to be signposted where they can get the appropriate help that they require. Now, one of the things that we do as well, Kevin, is we collate what we do, and when we find new issues emerging, which new issues, by the way, in Windrush are emerging every day, we actually feed it back to the Home Office and say, right, this is a problem. Now, I've been talking about people born after 1983 for the past 10 years before the Windrush scandal emerged. And the issue is that people born here, you are not automatically British. And that's, those messages are absolutely crucial to let people know that if you have a child and you are not British, your child is not automatically British because your nationality is based upon your mum. And if your mum has never naturalized, then that doesn't automatically make you British. If your father's British, your father can apply for a passport for you. But the point is, at the end of the day, there are additional issues. Additional issues as well. Many people in the 1970s, where I grew up, you remember some of this. Some people went home with the children. And when I say went home, they went home to Jamaica, Barbados, but those children were British. They then went into adulthood in those countries and they had children. The law applies there as well, particularly for the mothers. And if mum had children, then the children will be British. But then they have difficulty demonstrating to the high commissions there that they are British. So that's a new twist, which I've now proven. When I talked about it for the past 8 years, everyone thought it was a myth. But last year, we actually proved it because we then had a live case come forward And as a result of that, this is more far-reaching than we really think.
Okay, thank you, Bishop. In previous conversations, you've raised what happens when Windrush repair is hardest for the people least able to fight it. And that includes families trying to claim after someone died overseas, for example, or people still stranded abroad, and cases stalled by probate requirements. So I wonder if you can just answer, what needs to change in Windrush repair so the people the system leaves out can still access justice? And what's the lesson for the church about designing racial justice so that it doesn't rely on insiders chasing it?
Basically, it's to understand how to access the system.
Mm-hmm.
There is assistance there from the Home Office. They do have a couple of probate experts there that will handle the probate. The issue is trust, okay? So what the Home Office has, because they do have a vulnerable persons team, my dealings with them, I can only speak for me. They are very cooperative and they do get things done. However, others may have a different experience. But for someone, an individual themselves dealing with them, there is that trust issue. Why should I trust the Home Office when you inflicted this on me in the first place? But unless you engage, we don't know what to expect. Now, as an organization, we have engaged, we get the outcomes. That's all I can say there, Kevin. But there is assistance there to deal with the issues of probate. The biggest issue is in those claims is evidence, because it's like anything else. If you have a car crash, you crash into someone, you're going to say it wasn't me, they're going to say it wasn't me. Before you know it, they're going to look for evidence. The point is here, evidence has to be provided. However, if we say, for example, a good example is someone tried to come back from Jamaica and they were stopped. They were then left in Jamaica and they've passed away. The Home Office can check information there. They can check whether or not the person lived here because they can check HMRC records. They can check DWP records as well. They may well have a record of when the person left. Now, if they were turned away, there should be a record of when the person's turned away as well. So I'm saying that loosely because they do have reach to clarify information. Families have to be forthright. But the importance of advocacy is this. When families are caught up in this, and they're caught up in the emotion of it, especially on a bereaved person estate, the experiences are different in how you deal with it. I have dealt with some because I'm not attached to it, and I have the compassion for them losing a loved one. The importance is I'm able to bring it to a satisfactory conclusion because I handle it on the basis of it's business and we need to deal with it. And that's the importance of advocacy, but strong advocacy that looks out for the victim and not individual attainment, meaning looking for popularity. This isn't about popularity. This is about getting justice. And as well, if you're part of West Midlands Justice within the Church of England, it's important to understand justice, seeking justice and fighting for justice doesn't make you popular. People actually hate you as a result of that because you're trying to change a stereotypical norm where people think that we're the enemy, where people think that we're not human, for example. Now, last March, we held a faith conference and we're working with some folks at the Church of England at the moment on this whole issue of Windrush. And we're hoping that the church, we can support the church, including the Anglican Church, in terms of advocacy and training so that they can move things forward in terms of providing that all-important advocacy, which is absolutely crucial. So supporting that advocacy, but ensuring as well, working with the Windrush National Organisation, we provide the backup in order to ensure that the full strength of the organisation is seeking the maximum outcome for any claimant, but also at the same time as well, by ensuring that the claim is a valid claim in the first place. Because one of the big issues that we're having, Kevin, is that some people believe that they can claim no matter what. And that's not true. And one has to limit the expectation of when people do claim under the Windrush Compensation Scheme. That's important. We're not limiting it. As far as I'm concerned, let me clarify that. If 100 people come to me and 100 people qualify to claim compensation, it's 100 claims. But if someone comes along and, like the lady this morning, it's the way I was treated, I said to her, sadly, it's not there for that. But delving in to her past, because we just don't tell people you don't qualify. What we do is we ask them about their past. We ask them about their journey. That lady now has a potential claim because what she thought was insignificant is actually significant in terms of the Windrush compensation scheme. So this is where strong, hard advocacy comes in. This is also where advocacy that has a working knowledge of the Windrush scheme comes in as well.
Okay, thank you, Bishop. There were comments where people were clear about crisis and delay. So, for example, typical comment might be 18 months on and not a penny. And the Home Office describes urgent and exceptional payments for acute difficulties affecting things such as life, dignity, or ability to return to the UK, usually under around £5,000, plus a vulnerable persons team that liaises with landlords, employers, debtors, utilities, etc. And I suspect this is a dignity question, not a service question. So can I ask, when someone is in urgent need right now, what should a dignity first response look like? And what role do you see for churches and community organisations in the West Midlands to meet needs without adding shame or surveillance?
I can tell you what Windrush National Organisation does, and I can tell you what we do at the Village Fellowship, which is the church where I'm presiding bishop. What we do is, because we do Windrush surgery as well, we have food banks. We have people come to us. They can come to us outside of those hours. We provide them assistance there. We've provided people assistance in the past with help with the utilities. But what we do is, if it's the case that they do qualify under the Windrush scheme, what we do is we actually liaise with them to the vulnerable persons team. And we do get them payments as well. The point is, it's important, again, advocacy, you're that bridge. And the church has an important role to play there, in my view, to be that all-important bridge. That bridge, not just demonstrating grace and humility, but to also demonstrate credibility. But that's credibility both sides. It's credibility with the claimant or with the victim, and also credibility when you talk to the Home Office as well. Now, overall, our advocacy, we will deal with anyone. Now, what's an example of that? We had a gentleman who was stuck in Poland for 27 years. He came back to the UK. We assisted him. The Home Office paid for a hotel for him. Once he was able to get his benefits sorted, we helped with that. The Home Office did not. We did. The Home Office only helped with some finances, initial finances, and it was quite quick. The bottom line is, once he was sorted there with his pension, we then expedited the housing application for him. He was over 55, he's in his 70s. We got him an over 55 flat. He moved in, we got him assistance to furnish that flat, and he's now living in that flat. He's getting his pension, and he's starting to settle. And we support him now to settle so that the other issues that need to be tackled, we tackle those. Now, when he came back, the media were quite, every time I did an interview, I mentioned that we have to help him get a bus pass. And everyone said, why is this free bus pass so important? Number one, he's entitled to it. Number two, it gives him that air of freedom of mobility. And number three, it's something that everyone else takes for granted. It's that sense of belonging. That's what's important there.
Yes.
We're not finished with him, but the point is, at the end of the day, we take it in stages. But I think where we differ from the Home Office very, very much is that, and I've said this, for example, the Home Office will liaise with councils, but we're saying we have to liaise with councils and social housing providers to put people into accommodation, like what I've done. But my background's housing. I do have a little bit of an advantage, nothing major, but with over 55s, we can get them into accommodation quite quickly. And we've been able to do that on more than one occasion. Now, you talk about money Now, urgent and exceptional payments, we've covered that. We just make the case that this person requires assistance. Once we make the case, we can say how much they need. We justify that. And normally payments can come out quite quickly. Quickest payments we've had out is within, I think it was 5 working days from the time application made to the time the payment was made. So that's not too bad. Now, the Windrush Commissioner, he was our former Vice Chair, Reverend Clive Foster, and no, he's a minister. And he's still a minister of Pilgrim Church in Nottingham. And one of the things is that he negotiated with the Home Office where someone has an offer of compensation, but they then reject that offer of compensation and they want to go to appeal. They can get up to 75% of that money paid. Now, people will always get £10,000 as an interim payment. Not in all cases, but some will if it's agreed that they are entitled to some compensation. Some may not. So an example, if someone is offered £20,000, they can, and they put in an appeal, they can have up to 15,000. Now, if someone's already had 10,000, the offer's 20,000, they get the additional 5,000. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So that can happen. And then the rest is left in the pot until the appeal is concluded. Now, if someone has a life-threatening illness, someone at a vulnerable age, then their claims can be expedited as well. That has to be articulated to the Home Office. And we've actually asked, well, how are you going to know if someone's pulling the wool over your eyes or not? Because that means you're going to start it. And that's an important question to ask because we need to ensure that that is respected. What we don't want is people trying to fast track and someone who's genuinely at the end of their life, they're being pushed down the queue. I'm not saying that's happened, but we must operate with dignity and we must operate with that integrity as well. It's absolutely crucial. Now, you've talked about what does dignity look like. Some people do not want to be approaching as though it's hard sometimes for people to ask someone else for money. People do have their pride. And it's important that, we deal with that. It's important that we acknowledge it. And it's important then that we ensure that we lessen that perceived humiliation that many will think is there. There is no humiliation here. Actually, it's a stroke of wisdom sometimes for people to seek help because the Lord sends people out there to help those in need. And it's our duty to treat them with that dignity and respect that they deserve. And that's what's important here. And as far as I am concerned, we seek to ensure that we get the best outcome for families. Now, I say families because one of the things with Windrush compensation as well, close family, we've talked briefly about deceased estates. We've got the primary claimant. You've also got close family members as well. So in a case that I've dealt with, the father was impacted. He's got 4 children. We've sorted out 2 children with their claims. The other 2 are being processed now. And all of them to date have all been positive outcomes. So the point I'm making there is that when we look at the overarching issue again, it goes back to effective advocacy. Some are saying then there should be legal assistance provided. That may well be the case. I call it professional assistance because this is compensation. And the reason that I get results on a personal note now is because I used to investigate compensation claims when I worked for Birmingham City Council. And then I became a decision maker many, many years ago. But the skills that you need to do it are still there. So I expect it places me at a greater advantage than others. But the facts are that we have to ensure that cases are articulated properly and also as well that we support victims on their journey. But also as well, it's about being impartial. One has to set aside your political views because as far as it's concerned, this whole issue has been caused by successive governments, no matter what their political colours are. And what we have to do is view it from the point of view of justice, levelling that playing field of injustice.
Okay, thank you, Bishop. I mean, we did touch on those who might be suffering from various medical conditions, but one of the sharpest moments in some of the exchanges is the pushback on medical proof. So, for example, people describing chronic stress, trauma, job loss, and being placed on lower tariffs because they lack medical evidence, with a direct plea to stop treating medical evidence as the only path to proving impact. And I just wanted to ask, how should institutions handle evidence when the harm is long-term, racialized, and traumatic? And what would you want changed so that proof doesn't become a quiet tool of denial?
Yet again, the cases I've dealt with, they've been documented with GPs, and also as well because of matters I've dealt with in the past as a trained union steward. It sounds as though I'm a know-it-all. Unfortunately, I've been there, done it, worn a t-shirt. Yet again, it's down to how do you articulate it. Simple. If someone's suffering anxiety, stress, and depression, I will argue that that's taken at face value. So you've got a problem. You can always, my client is always happy to speak to your professional. So I say to them, hey, this is a compliance scheme, by the way. So why don't you get your professional to speak to them? But normally, GP records are there. One can also put in, if you're the advocate and you've got that know-how, you can actually say point blank, you can talk about your observations whilst you're doing the scheme with the person. Now, I did a compensation claim and it took me 5 months on and off because I could only do it one consultation a week, 1 hour it was supposed to be. It turned out to be half an hour because the person became distressed within the 30 minutes. So I'd stopped there. I documented that so that the Home Office were aware. I've done one today and I've known this lady for a couple of years. I didn't put it in because I was waiting for a specific issue that we've been arguing about. We've been waiting for that issue to be on the agenda. It's now on the agenda, so we're able to put it in. It's quite specialist, but there are extenuating circumstances in her case. But the important thing is, whilst I was dictating her claim, she started crying. Now that's hearing me describe her life, not her telling me. She became very, very upset. But you see, the thing is that sometimes, no matter how one looks at it, one has to look. And this is where I say sometimes, although they're deciding compensation claims based upon strict compensation criteria, one of the things the Home Office has to appreciate are the experiences that people have had. And so ask yourself one question, is this normal? Now, they have, in certain circumstances, they do use what we call balance of probabilities. Now, if someone's lost their job, lost their income, lost all income rather, including rights to benefit, because remember, if you get sacked from your employment, you lose benefit for 6 months, technically, okay? All of a sudden, you're in arrears with your gas, your electric, your council tax, your mortgage, you're in arrears, they're knocking the door. Who's not going to be under pressure? Who's not going to be feeling depressed?
Of course.
It's common sense. And that's the thing. And we're saying that on the balance of probabilities, although this person did not go to the doctor, does it mean that they didn't suffer? And we argue they didn't go to the doctor because they were ashamed. Even to go to your doctor, I mean, if we look at black men get a little twitch, I ain't going to the doctor. Women do. We're talking about the nature of the beast that is within us. And we have to understand how individuals, some differ, some do things one way, some do things another. And what we say, one cap does not fit all. But yet again, good advocacy will drive home that message.
Okay, thank you, Bishop. A core challenge was raised about the Home Office should not be the judge and the jury of its own conduct. And the Home Office response points to an independent review via the adjudicator's office and a process to appoint an independent person. So what does independence with teeth look like in Windrush repair? And what lessons should institutions like the church take if we want accountability that isn't symbolic?
That's a controversial question for me, and it's got a controversial answer. So, in terms of independent adjudication on the appeals process, I'm sure we put the document into the Home Office that the appeal process should be revamped. Taking the compensation scheme away from the Home Office, who should never have had it in the first place, is going to be a logistical difficulty now, because you'd be opening up claims and opening up claimants who have settled with the Home Office, open up old wounds. However, I do believe that the appeals process is very government regulated, because the Home Office are doing the claims. Tier 1 is done in-house, which is right, because, it's someone else within. Tier 2 is the adjudicator. The next stage is to go to the Parliamentary Ombudsman Service. There is only Tier 1 and Tier 2. We believe that Tier 1, there should be a joint panel to look at it. That joint panel is clearly Home Office, because it's their scheme. They know what they're looking at. And also advocates like us, for example, who can look at it and say, well, you've missed that, you've missed that, you've missed that. Importantly as well is to bring that cultural understanding to the claim. I remember a colleague handled a claim once where family could not come across from, I think it was Ghana or someplace like that, many years ago, because their child was graduating out of university. They said, so what? They didn't actually appreciate that culturally in that family, that was the first child that went to university. So it's a big thing. Don't get me wrong. It was dealt with in the end, because it's to understand the culture within families. That's one of the big issues. Where does the church stand? Church itself, particularly Anglican Church, still has a lot of fixing up to do. Because obviously, at the end of the day, and I'm not going to apologize for saying this, we know the transatlantic slave trade. We know exactly as well what happened to the Windrush generation when they came here. And I say exactly because it happened to my wife on a church on City Road. I won't name it. Mm-hmm. Well, think about it. It's on the corner of City Road and Portland Road. Now, importantly, they lived in Aston. My wife's mom's from Barbados. Barbadian people are primarily Anglicans. They went to St. James Parish Church. It was Christian St. James Parish Church in Aston. They moved to City Road, Edgbaston, first Sunday morning with their 4 children. No, 5 actually at that time now. They trundled off to this church, only up the road, to be told, please do not come back next Sunday. Your presence is upsetting the congregation. Okay. You see that barrier to worship. That's the first thing the Anglican Church has to deal with, because there are still scars within families because of that. Don't get me wrong, they went through Summerfield Park, and there's a church there called Christ Church, Summerfield. And they ended up going there for many, many years and had wonderful times there. But what happened at St. Germain's, there you go, I've named it, still sticks in their minds until today. And that's the thing. And to credibilize that, it would be great. The Bible teaches us to purge our sin, to confess. Confession is good for the soul. I think it's time that the Anglican Church says, we are so sorry for what we did. As an institution, that should never have happened. And was it institution? Was it individual vicars? It doesn't matter. People see it as I was rejected by the church. Some people today, till this day, I know, do not go to church because they said, God rejected me because the vicar said, don't come back. Until those issues are tackled, we are going to always have that issue of credibility, particularly with the churches, and in this case, the Anglican Church, trying to really deliver social justice. Because then you said something importantly, when does it change from being words into action? Mm-hmm. One has to show intent, and demonstrating intent is by saying, listen, we got it wrong, we are sorry, and we are now going to help to join this campaign, to be vocal on this and hold government to account. When we look at the strength, when we look at other faiths, we look what's happening between the Jews and the Muslims, right? They will get government to jump straight away. Anyone can criticize Christianity particularly. And before you know it, no, everyone's quiet. Sometimes I remember something happened not so long ago. I was the only person speaking out. I appear to be the enemy. That's wrong. I mean, and the other thing I do say this, and I don't apologize for this, is that because we're all Christians from different denominations, one cap does not fit all either. And I make that crystal clear. You know, we have this one God, but we have different pathways that we take. But at the end of the day, we do have something in common. And that's God, and our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And I think that's the starting point for us to be able to work together. But there has to be a willingness to work together. And when we talk about racial justice, I will tell you this now. There are some times when I'm on the battlefield, I've got some of my fellow campaigners around me, but my ministers, my ministerial colleagues rather, and I do include Anglican ministers in this as well. Sometimes a lot are missing. And I wonder why. Is it out of fear? Is it out of fear of falling out with others? I only fear falling out with one person. God. That's who I fear falling out with. You know, obviously you don't want to fall out with the wife either, but the important thing is we have to know where our commitment is. And I think that is absolutely crucial to let people know who you are, what you stand for. And we must now grab the bull by the horns and move forward without fear. Because unless we do that, advantages will be taken of the Windrush generation and probably I won't be about in 20 years' time. You never know. We'll be having this conversation again. Or hopefully the younger generation will be having this conversation again. But I would like this conversation to be, this is what happened. This is where we are now. We've progressed. That's what we call real outcomes, us progressing. And what does progression look like? Were you born here, Kevin?
Yes, I was, yes.
Okay, I was as well. Importantly, progression is when people stop asking us, where you're from.
True. Correct. Thank you, Bishop. I know you touched on the Tier 1 and Tier 2 slightly earlier. There were repeated concerns about being stuck in Tier 1 review and not knowing who the caseworker is and lacking direct contact. Now, the Home Office response mentions named contacts in an acknowledgement, letters, monthly updates, and published review numbers. This is governance. Can people track what's happening to them? And can they reach a human being? So to ask, what should transparent, accessible casework look like in practice? And what are the non-negotiables you'd set for any institution that claims it's delivering justice?
They are doing named caseworkers. Names are at the bottom of the letter. Sometimes as well, they do make a phone call to introduce themselves once it's allocated. They now have the caseworker that takes the case on from the initial assessment. They actually take the whole thing through to the end. That much I can say is happening. I have no cause to ring caseworkers because I'm quite happy sending them an email. However, I've had to ring back the Windrush compensation scheme a few times. I've had problems. What that problem is because of data protection, they can't tell me who they're ringing about. So when I ring sometimes, it's a bit difficult for me, especially if you've got more than one case ongoing. But normally an individual would know what their case reference number would be, and they can ring. And what I've found is if the caseworker's unable to take the call, leave a message, they do call back. Now, I've tried and tested it. Now, you're going to say it's because it's you. And I'm going to say to you, yes, it is. However, I would hope and pray that everyone else is treated in the same way. So, but in terms of tried and tested, I've tested it. When others do have issues, if I hear about it, I will take their case details and write to the Home Office and bring it to management's attention. That's where, yet again, an organisation such as the Windrush National Organisation is absolutely essential because we are able to escalate. Our Vice Chair, Glenda Caesar, was a renowned Windrush campaigner. She actually has monthly meetings with the Home Office, with the Windrush compensation scheme, rather, where she escalates cases and raises concerns. As an organisation, we meet with directors quarterly. We're now meeting with the adjudicator as well. And we're hoping to have our 6-monthly meeting set up with the Ombudsman as well. Importantly, that's where we take strategic issues. We're not going to take individual cases because there is another mechanism for that. But in terms of strategic issues, such as if the phones aren't being answered, if the feedback isn't there, if the governance is not being followed, for example, and emerging issues as well, how to deal with those, and advising as well on in terms of cultural issues as well. So very, very high level strategic discussions on how to improve the scheme. Now, has any of that worked? Yes. We've had people having issues having passport. We now have the passport office and the Windrush team. They now talk to each other. Now, you may say, wow, you know what? It's achieving results for people, and that's the important thing. So that's just one example. The thing about it is, it can't happen without us campaigning. It can't happen without us sounding off about it. But it happens because we are prepared to sit down and offer solutions based on the experiences that we have, and we are able to do that. And yes, changes are happening. Is it quick? No. Why is it not quick? Because we're dealing with government departments who have a culture of doing things their way. It's very difficult to get change overnight. If anybody knows anything about these government organizations, changing that culture of how they operate overnight is not going to happen. What we have to do, we have to be forthright in what we expect. We have to ensure that our expectations are achievable. And then we just keep arguing and we keep pushing. That's what we need to do.
Okay, thank you, Bishop. You touched on cultural issues in that answer there. I wanted to ask, people have mentioned things such as how many staff are culturally aware or have lived experience, and whether there's a case for real training because delivery feels cumbersome. And the Home Office response describes training that includes Windrush history, communications, mentoring, and specialist training for staff dealing with vulnerability. I know the Church of England's From Lament to Action report also pushes mandatory training and mentoring as a priority area. So can I ask, what kind of training and mentoring actually changes decisions and outcomes? And how do we avoid training becoming theatre that leaves the structure intact?
The problem that we have with this, Kevin, is one cap doesn't fit all. Okay? And the different scenarios and the emerging scenarios which are happening. I can say the Home Office do basic training. What is Windrush? What's Commonwealth? Things like that. That is basic training that actually should have gone to basic education in school. This is why the argument about having Black history, Windrush history on the agenda is important, because they played a role in British society. It played a role in making Britain what it is today and shaping Britain. I think the importance now of driving this particular agenda forward is to ensure who are the providers of this training. Government like to deal with their cohort. And I think recently, I know our vice chair, for example, have briefcase workers on some cultural issues as well. So to bring the changes on, it's the openness on the organization to talk to what I call aren't the usual suspects. That's how you bring about change, because then it shows a commitment to change, if that makes sense. If you're going to use the same agencies that you always use, you don't want anything to change because they're just going to deliver. They don't care, and they just move on to the next task.
I understand. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Bishop. And final question. There's a powerful warning about funding and commemoration becoming a tick box exercise, especially when institutions have never entertained our culture until money appears. And that can be a direct parallel to the church in some ways. We can host events, or we can redistribute power and repair harm. So finally, I wanted to ask, what does accountable Windrush commemoration look like, especially for younger people who need the truth and are waiting to action, not just celebration? Okay.
This year on the 6th of April, we held the 4th Windrush National Vigil in Windrush Square in Brixton. We're hoping next year that it can now be expanded. It's the biggest one yet. It was on Easter Monday. We took a chance having it, and we ended up with quite a few people in Windrush Square. It was welcomed. Some people who were passing stopped and said, I didn't realize people were treated in this way. There we start the conversation. There we start the education. We want to do commemorative events. My view is when someone goes to their grandmother's house for dinner on Sunday, although it's Father's Day, we're having our church service as well at the New Testament Church of God in Lascelles. one of the things that we're saying is this. Just put it on the agenda. Mom, did you share a bed with people? The bedshift system. Start letting our youngsters appreciate what they have in life, because our elders did not have that. They had to build a home. And that's the thing. So these events are important, but it's not about a party. It's not about jerking chicken. It's not about reggae music. Yes, those are part of it. It's not even about a church service. It's not about a sermon. What it's actually about is telling the story of the challenges that we faced and how through our faith, because church was the center of community back home, through our faith, through our belief, and through what Jeremiah 29 reminds us, that I have plans for you, not to cause you harm. Importantly, how we overcame those issues, how our faith and our unity, Psalms 133, how good and wonderful it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. The partner system. We overcame no blacks, no Irish, no dogs by doing what? Throwing partner, buying houses, the same houses with the signs on, we own them. The barrier to worship, the same church that said, please do not come back next Sunday, your presence is upsetting the congregation. We bought those churches. That's what we need to teach our young people. And importantly as well, and I say this to stop our young people killing each other. Let them know potentially their grandparents probably shared the same bed. Not at the same time. They used to share their pot of food on a Sunday. Let them understand what life was about. And that's the important thing. Let them understand what true community is. That's how I see it. I see it no other way. These events, for me, are a catalyst to transform our community. Number one, for wider society to appreciate when the Windrush generation came here, they were British, to appreciate the jobs no one else wanted. They had to do, to appreciate many were de-skilled. They came here as teachers and told that their qualifications, despite teaching O-levels and A-levels back home, and even teaching things like Oxford University and Cambridge University syllabuses, they were told, your qualifications, you can't teach here. So they had to go and sweep the factory floor instead. Building the NHS, building cars down at Longbridge, serving, building in munitions, serving in the armed forces as well, driving buses, doing the peace work to put the great back into Britain. That's what we need to let everyone know, and that will give that greater sense of belonging. And the last thing I'm going to say on this, start educating those that call the Windrush generation immigrants. They were not immigrants. Many that came here, my parents came here in 1960 and 1961. They came here with a British passport. They were British subjects. They were not immigrants, because you can't be a British immigrant. This is their mother country. When they went to school, they sung God Save the King, then it changed to God Save the Queen. My father was born in 1925, so at school they sung God Save the King. My mum was born in 1936. In the early day, her time at school as well was God Save the King. People who were born there, they didn't see a Jamaica flag flying over King's House or flying in the schools. It was a Union Jack. They were told, you are British, you are not Jamaican, you are British. So the facts are, at the end of the day, it gives our children that greater sense of belonging. But ultimately, justice will come the day when we are stopped being asked, where are you from?
Okay, thank you, Bishop. Thank you for ending there on such powerful words. Bishop Desmond Jaddoo, thank you for speaking with me today and for helping us connect Windrush, repair, and institutional accountability. And as we mark Windrush Day, maybe we move beyond remembrance into action. This has been Seasons of Justice from the West Midlands Racial Justice Initiative. I'm Kevin Thompson, and we look forward to you joining us again next time. Goodbye.